Tennessee's streets are being called the city of walking dead, where fentanyl overdoses are rising faster than almost anywhere in America. Families are being torn apart, neighborhoods hollowed out, and yet the crisis is spreading in silence. If fentanyl can transform an entire state this quickly, what's stopping it from consuming the rest of the country? The streets of Tennessee look calm at first glance. Cars move past brick buildings, kids ride bikes, and church bells ring in the distance. But hidden behind that picture is a storm. Every day across America, more than 150 people die from fentanyl. And here in Tennessee, the numbers are climbing even faster than the national average. State health reports show more than 4,500 overdose deaths in 2025, most linked to fentanyl, a drug so strong that even 2 milligrams, the size of a few grains of salt, can kill. In Davidson County alone, overdoses jumped nearly 30% in a single year, leaving neighborhoods to carry the weight of the losses. The crisis is so deep that people have begun to call some blocks the city of walking dead, because users wander the sidewalks slow and hollow-eyed, their bodies trapped between life and death. The camera lingers on one street in East Nashville where empty pill bottles lie scattered in a gutter. A woman's voice breaks the silence. She holds a framed photo of her son, age 21. Her eyes are red, her voice low. He thought it was a Xanax. It was fentanyl. I found him in his room. He never woke up. Her story is one among thousands, but it feels like it carries the weight of them all. The scope of the crisis is not abstract, not far away. It is here now in the homes, schools, and corners of Tennessee. The reason the numbers are so high is layered. For years, doctors wrote heavy prescriptions for painkillers. When those pills were cut off, many turned to heroin. Then fentanyl arrived. Cheaper, stronger, and easier to move across borders. Dealers mix it into fake pills, cocaine, even marijuana. Users often do not know what they are taking until it is too late. What makes Tennessee stand out is its position at the crossroads of major highways, a prime route for drug shipments coming from Atlanta, Louisville, and beyond. That constant flow feeds the local supply and makes it hard to stop. The narrator's voice sharpens. The national epidemic is already staggering. But here in Tennessee, the numbers are worse. The rise is sharper, the future more fragile. The frame shifts, but the darkness does not fade. Instead, it pulls us deeper, showing how the crisis is not only about the drug but about the web that holds people in place. Under a bridge near the Cumberland River, tents flap in the wind. Smoke rises from a small fire. Men and women sit slumped, some nodding, some barely moving. This is normal now, says a volunteer nurse. People use right here in the open. Everyone looks away. It's like the city has stopped seeing them. In some neighborhoods, kids grow up watching this daily. What shocks outsiders has become part of the landscape, almost invisible. The reasons people here are so vulnerable run deeper than the drug itself. Tennessee has some of the highest poverty rates in the region, especially in Memphis and rural Appalachia. Factories closed, jobs left, and wages stayed low. Families break under the stress. For many, fentanyl becomes a way to escape pain for a moment, even though it often becomes a prison. Clinics exist, but not enough. In Knoxville, a man explains that he tried to get help. There was one clinic, 200 people on the wait list. By the time it was my turn, I was back using again. In rural counties, people drive hours just to find a Suboxone provider. If they don't have a car, they have no chance at all. Social stigma adds another wall. Asking for help is often seen as weakness, and people hide their struggle until it is too late. Teens are not spared. In high schools across the state, pills move through social media apps like Snapchat, delivered faster than pizza. Some think they are buying Adderall or Percocet. But the pills are pressed with fentanyl. The silence is heavy as the narrator speaks again. Addiction here is not a choice made in a vacuum. It is born in homes without work, schools without counselors, clinics without beds. It grows in shame, in fear, in isolation. And when it takes hold, it spreads like a net that pulls tighter each day. The web of connections is everywhere. Economic hardship, broken systems, untreated mental illness, easy access to dangerous drugs. And every thread seems to lead back to the same place. People lost too soon. Families left behind in streets that carry more grief than they can hold. The act closes on a chilling image. A boy walking past a row of tents on his way to school, his eyes down, stepping carefully around a man lying motionless on the sidewalk. The question lingers in the air. What happens to a community when this becomes its normal sight? Under the gray morning sky, the camera moves slowly over the Cumberland River, where fog hangs low and damp air clings to the skin. The sound of cars rushing across the bridge mixes with the faint hum of voices below. Here, tucked in the shadow of concrete pillars, clusters of tents line the bank. Some are patched with duct tape, others sag from rain. A woman sits on a folding chair outside her tent, her eyes glazed, her movements slow. A man nearby heats a small piece of foil, the smoke curling upward before fading into the mist. For people walking past, this sight is no longer shocking. It is part of the daily picture, a new normal that most try not to look at too closely. A nurse who volunteers here shakes her head. When I started coming 3 years ago, I thought this was temporary. Now it feels permanent. The streets are different. You see people drifting, nodding, lost in plain sight. It's like the city has stopped noticing. This acceptance is one of the most dangerous parts of the crisis. In some neighborhoods of Memphis, kids walk to school past groups of users lying on sidewalks. In Knoxville, near bus stops, people stumble and slump over, sometimes frozen mid-step as fentanyl takes hold of their bodies. The phrase "city of walking dead" came from these images. Streets where people look alive but seem emptied inside. For children growing up around it, the line between normal and not normal is blurred. What once would have been met with alarm now passes without reaction. When the camera shows a boy on his way to class, glancing only once at a man passed out against a wall, it feels like a quiet warning of what the next generation may inherit. The roots of why Tennessee is so vulnerable spread wide. Poverty grips much of the state. In rural Appalachia, whole towns lost factories years ago. Jobs disappeared, wages stayed low, and families broke apart under the weight. In Memphis, one of the poorest big cities in the country, many struggle to pay rent and buy food. In these conditions, drugs slip into the cracks. Fentanyl is cheap, powerful, and always available, offering escape from pain and despair even as it deepens them. A man living under the bridge says softly, "It makes you forget hunger for a while, but then it takes everything else too." Access to help is another broken link. In East Tennessee counties, some towns do not have a single detox bed. If someone decides today that they want treatment, they may have to wait weeks or months. In Knoxville, a former user explains, "I signed up for the clinic. They told me 200 people ahead of me. 200. By then you either give up or you're gone." Transportation makes the problem worse. Many people do not have cars, and public buses do not reach far enough to get Suboxone or methadone. Some must drive hours. If you cannot make that trip every day or every week, you fall through the cracks. The barriers are not only about distance. Shame plays a powerful role. In many towns, asking for help is seen as weakness. Churches preach against addiction, but rarely offer treatment. Families hide their loved ones' struggles until the funeral. One woman from a small town says, "We whisper about it, but we don't talk about it. If you admit you need help, people look at you like you're broken. So most just stay quiet until it's too late." Young people are caught in this web as well. In high schools across Tennessee, pills are sold through social media. A teenager in Nashville says he can order drugs on Snapchat faster than food delivery. "You think you're buying Adderall to stay awake or a Xanax to chill," he explains. But most of it is fake. It's fentanyl pressed to look real. The risk is invisible until it's too late. And every year more teens die from pills they thought were safe. Parents bury children before they even reach 20. Their lives stolen by a powder they never meant to take. The story tightens as the camera shows the faces of those left behind. A mother in Memphis holds up her phone to show texts from her daughter who was 17 when she died. The last message reads, "I'll be home by 9. She never came home." Another father from Knoxville sits on his porch, his voice breaking as he recalls the knock on his door. "The sheriff told me they found him by the river. Just a boy. My boy." The web of connections grows clearer. It is not only about fentanyl itself, but about the world that makes people reach for it. Poverty, broken families, lost jobs, closed clinics, stigma, and silence. Each factor alone might be heavy but not crushing. Together they form a net that tightens around people until there is no way out. The narrator's voice lowers. Addiction here is not a single choice. It is the air people breathe, the streets they live on, the shame they carry, the hunger they feel. It is a net, and each day the strands pull tighter. As the act closes, the camera follows a young boy walking past a tent city on his way to school, his shoes splashing through puddles. He does not look up as he passes a man lying motionless on the ground. The boy's silence is the heaviest sound of all. The question lingers, heavy and sharp. What will happen to a community when its children grow up seeing this as normal? The cold light of dawn falls over the streets of Chattanooga, and the sidewalks tell a story no one wants to read. A man in a faded hoodie shuffles past a boarded-up storefront, his hands trembling, his eyes sunken. He once worked inside that very building when it was a grocery store stacking shelves for steady pay. Now it is closed, the job's gone, and he wanders the street with no place to go. Addiction took root when his hours were cut and his back pain kept him from working. Pills were easy to find, then heroin, and finally fentanyl. Each step forward in his life seemed to be pulled back by something stronger, and now the cycle holds him tight. His story is not unique. It is a picture of the vicious circle that so many in Tennessee find themselves caught in, where addiction feeds loss, and loss feeds more addiction. The cycle begins with the first hit, often taken without knowing what it truly is. A pill pressed to look like medicine may carry enough fentanyl to end a life. If death does not come, the pull begins. Soon, users lose jobs because they cannot show up sober. Without work, bills go unpaid. Homes are lost, and families break apart. The next step is often the street, where survival becomes harder, and drugs become both comfort and curse. From there, encounters with police are common. People are arrested not for healing but for being sick in public, for holding a small bag, for trying to survive. The jail becomes the treatment center. But inside there are no counselors, no steady care, no long-term plan. Days pass in a cell, and then a door opens. They are pushed back onto the street, untreated and fragile, with the same hunger that put them there. One man tells his story, his voice rough, his face worn by years of struggle. I got out of jail with nothing. No meds, no plan, no help. Just the clothes I wore. 2 days later, I was using again. It feels like a trap built to keep you in. His words echo the experience of many. Jail is meant to be a stop, not a solution. But for those trapped in this loop, it becomes one more turn of the wheel that keeps spinning them back to where they began. The failures are not only personal but systemic. Naloxone, the drug that reverses overdoses, can save lives, but it is not evenly spread. In wealthier counties, first responders carry it in every vehicle, ready to use at a moment's notice. In some rural areas, there are no doses at all. By the time help arrives, it is too late. Clinics close for lack of funding, leaving whole counties without a single detox bed. Families call for help and are told to wait. Weeks pass, and the chance to act fades away. The system does not bend toward healing. It bends toward punishment, toward delay, toward silence. The ripple effects spread outward. Children in foster care rise in number as parents lose their lives or their freedom to addiction. Homeless shelters overflow, their beds filled with men and women who once had homes of their own. Hospitals report repeat visits from the same names, patients who come in again and again after overdoses, never reaching lasting care. Schools see empty chairs as students vanish, some pulled into the same cycle, others lost to grief when a parent or sibling dies. The camera lingers on one of these empty chairs in a Memphis classroom, the desk covered in dust. A teacher says softly, "He was here one day and gone the next. No goodbye, just gone." Even efforts meant to help sometimes deepen the harm. Strict rules for treatment programs make it easy to be pushed out for missing an appointment or failing a test. Once out, many return to the streets with fewer options than before. Fear of being judged or arrested keeps people from calling for help when overdoses happen. Policies that could save lives often create barriers instead. The cycle does not only trap those using fentanyl, It traps families, schools, hospitals, and whole communities in its grip. The narrator's voice sharpens, carrying the weight of what has been shown. This is more than an epidemic. It is a machine. Each part, addiction, job loss, homelessness, jail, stigma, silence feeds the next. People are caught in the gears, and once inside it is nearly impossible to escape. The music rises, strings pulling tight, carrying a sense of dread that feels heavy in the chest. The image returns to the man in the hoodie in Chattanooga, still walking the same block, still trapped in the same loop. His story is not ending. It is circling, repeating, feeding itself. And as the act closes, the silence that follows feels like a warning. If the machine keeps running, how many more will it pull in before it finally breaks? The sound of church bells rings softly over downtown Nashville as the sun breaks through the clouds, light pouring over streets that only hours earlier seemed swallowed in shadow. The camera follows a white van pulling up beside a park. Painted on its side are the words "Hope on Wheels." The doors open and volunteers step out carrying boxes. Inside are clean needles, naloxone kits, bottles of water and sandwiches wrapped in paper. A woman approaches, her hands shaking. She takes a kit, then a sandwich, whispering a quiet thank you. This van is one of several that now move through the city, meeting people where they are instead of waiting for them to come forward. A nurse who rides with the team says, "It's not about judgment. It's about keeping people alive long enough to have a chance." The simple act of handing someone a sandwich and a life-saving spray of naloxone feels small, but here it is powerful. Every spray that reverses an overdose is one more chance at life. In Memphis, hope takes a different shape. Inside an old brick church, pews have been turned into long rows of beds. Volunteers have painted the walls a warm yellow and hung quilts over the windows. This is a faith-led program that gives people in recovery not just a roof but a place to feel human again. A man who has been sober for 6 months sits on the edge of his bed, holding a Bible with one hand and a job application with the other. "They gave me a place to sleep," he says. "But more than that, they gave me back my dignity." Programs like this are fragile. They depend on donations and the will of volunteers. But even fragile hope can light up a dark room. Far from the city in the rolling hills of rural Tennessee, a new approach is rising. Clinics too far for many to reach now use telehealth. With a phone or a borrowed laptop, patients connect to counselors and doctors. Some speak to a therapist from a quiet corner of their trailer, others from the back seat of a parked car. But the connection is there. A young woman who has struggled for years says, "I don't have to drive 2 hours anymore. I can talk to someone right here. That makes me feel less alone." For those who live where buses don't go and clinics don't exist, a voice on the screen can mean the difference between silence and survival. The lens shifts outward to compare. In Portugal, the government decriminalized drugs years ago, shifting focus from punishment to treatment. Rates of overdose fell, and people began to seek help without fear. In Vermont, the hub-and-spoke model connects local clinics to larger centers, making sure no one is more than a short trip from care. These examples are not distant stories but lessons that Tennessee is beginning to test. A Nashville health worker explains, "We don't have to copy everything, but we can take what works and shape it to our people, our towns, our needs." The narrator's voice carries the weight of these comparisons, showing that even in the darkest of crises, other places have found a way forward. In Knoxville, hope speaks with the voice of a young woman in recovery. She sits in a circle of folding chairs in a community hall, a paper cup of coffee warming her hands. Around her are others who have fought the same fight. "It took one person believing I could change," she says. "Now I believe it too. And I try to be that person for someone else." Her eyes shine as she describes helping another woman find a treatment bed, driving her across the city herself. The act of one survivor lifting another is a chain stronger than the net of addiction. Each story like hers bends the cycle toward healing. The narrator turns to the audience, the camera closing in on faces we have seen before. Mothers holding photos, fathers sitting on porches, children walking past tents. "What do you think it will take to turn the tide?" the voice asks. Is it more clinics, more beds, more counselors? Is it less shame, less silence, more compassion? The question hangs heavy, meant not to be answered in one word, but to spark thought. to open space for conversation. The call is not only to watch but to act, to see the problem as more than numbers or headlines. As the act draws to its close, the tone shifts to something steadier, forward-looking. The streets of Tennessee are not lost. The cycle can be broken, but it will not be by one piece alone. It will take healthcare that reaches every corner, treatment that lasts, housing that heals, jobs that give purpose, and a community willing to stand without judgment. The work will be hard, and the road long, but it is possible. The narrator's voice softens. The machine that traps can be stopped, but only if we replace its gears with care. Only if we see those walking the streets not as shadows but as people. Only if we act now. The final image shows a boy walking to school. The same boy who once stepped past a man lying still on the sidewalk. This time the man is standing, handing out flyers for a recovery program. His back straight, his eyes clear. The boy looks up and smiles. The music swells, hopeful but gentle, carrying the promise of what could be. As the screen fades, words appear. Hope is not lost. The fight is ours. The time is now. And with that, the story leaves the viewer not in despair but in challenge. Will you be part of breaking the cycle, or will you let the silence continue?